I want to be on stage for the Super Bowl one day in front of my mom.
I went to a Super Bowl before and watching the halftime show.
It's nothing like it.
And wish you see the artist, you be like, I know they could have sung the song that I was featured on.
That hurt a lot. You know what I'm talking about, it hurt a whole lot.
And I worked my off to get that position, and it was ripped away from me.
Lil Wayne was ready to reclaim the throne. With the Carter VI, his comeback was meant to be massive. A return to form, a victory lap, a message to the rap world that Lil Wayne still ran this. But then, Kendrick Lamar said nothing, no diss track, no interview, just one silent move at the perfect moment, and everything started falling apart. This isn't about beef. This is about how a quiet masterclass in timing, presence, and dominance completely unraveled one of the biggest comeback attempts in hip-hop. Let's break it down. The comeback should have worked. Lil Wayne had the recipe for a powerful return. With Thar Carter VI, the stakes were high and the setup looked promising. A legacy name, years of fan anticipation, and the chance to reassert dominance in a game now run by younger voices. He brought in big features, Machine Gun Kelly, even Bono, and added a sentimental twist by featuring his own son. The rollout was traditional of Wayne, heavy interviews, flashy visuals, and non-stop promotion. But as the album dropped, something didn't click. The hype was fading faster than expected. Critics pointed out inconsistencies. Streaming numbers were respectable, but didn't feel historic. The narrative quickly shifted from Wayne's back to Is This It? But what made this unraveling so strange was that no one was actively opposing Wayne. There was no dissent, no opposition, just silence from one man, and that silence began to echo louder than Wayne's entire campaign. Kendrick's timing was surgical. While Lil Wayne was everywhere promoting Thar Carter VI, Kendrick Lamar was doing the opposite and still winning. He didn't release an album, he didn't fire shots, but his calculated silence worked like a pressure valve on the culture. At just the right moment, Kendrick made subtle moves, an iconic Super Bowl performance, a few cryptic appearances, and one or two loose verses that sent fans into decode mode. Suddenly, Kendrick was everywhere without actually being present. This wasn't luck. It was strategy. As Wayne pushed harder for attention, Kendrick pulled back and created scarcity. And that scarcity built mystique. In a world drowning in content, Kendrick's restraint looked powerful, while Wayne's noise started to feel like desperation. And when fans started choosing which narrative felt more authentic, they began leaning into Kendrick's. Because sometimes, the loudest voice in the room is the one that chooses not to speak at all. The Super Bowl changed everything. The 59th Super Bowl was supposed to be a defining cultural moment, especially for New Orleans. And with Lil Wayne being one of the city's most iconic figures, many fans expected to see him center stage, but he wasn't invited. Instead, Kendrick Lamar got the spotlight in front of the world, and he crushed it. His performance wasn't just technically sharp, it was symbolic. It said to millions watching, "This is the voice of this generation." Meanwhile, Wayne had to watch from the sidelines, publicly expressing his disappointment in later interviews. That contrast was brutal. The visual of Kendrick commanding the Super Bowl stage while Wayne stood outside the frame spoke volumes. It wasn't an intentional slight, but it felt like one. To fans, it looked like Kendrick was being handed the moment that once would have belonged to Wayne. A torch wasn't passed. It was already gone, and the world saw it happen live. Now, the quiet shade in Kendrick's lyrics. Kendrick Lamar never came for Wayne directly, but he didn't have to. In tracks like Whacked Out Murals, Kendrick spoke in riddles, dropping layered bars that challenged the relevance of rap's old kings. Fans instantly started speculating. Was that about Wayne? Was he subtly addressing the gap between generations? The beauty of Kendrick's strategy is that he stays just vague enough to spark debate, but never so clear that it's seen as a full-blown attack. Meanwhile, Wayne's lyrical content in Thar Carter VI leaned more nostalgic, playful, and at times unfocused. It felt like Kendrick was writing for tomorrow, while Wayne was still rhyming for yesterday. And even though Kendrick never said his name, the message was heard. Fans read between every line, dissected every metaphor, and slowly began writing their own story, one where Kendrick was quietly asserting himself as the true leader of the moment, while Wayne clung to a fading crown. Fans turned the narrative themselves. This is where things turned brutal. Not from Kendrick's actions, but from the internet. Once Carter VI dropped, social media did what it always does: compare. Memes flew, tweets spread like wildfire, and video essays popped up, analyzing Wayne's fall-off. But more importantly, Kendrick's name kept showing up in the conversation, even when he hadn't dropped anything. Fans were using Kendrick as the measuring stick, holding Wayne's latest project against Kendrick's silence and still declaring a winner. That's the worst kind of loss, when you're fighting hard and your opponent isn't even swinging. Wayne wasn't just competing with Kendrick's catalog, he was competing with Kendrick's aura. And every time fans praised Kendrick's lyrical brilliance or cultural presence, they unintentionally pushed Wayne further down the conversation. It wasn't malicious, it was organic. But that kind of fan-driven shift is almost impossible to reverse, because once perception changes, reality starts following fast. The Carter VI rollout missed the moment. Wayne's rollout for Thala Carter VI was loud, fast, and everywhere, but it didn't feel modern. In today's hip-hop landscape, where minimalism, mystery, and selective engagement build intrigue, Wayne's approach felt like a throwback. He leaned into high-profile interviews, released traditional promotional material, and dropped the album with a feature-heavy track list. But the rollout lacked a unifying story. There was no central message, no theme the culture could rally behind. Contrast that with Kendrick, who hadn't said much in months, yet still felt like the cultural center of gravity. Wayne seemed like he was promoting to the culture. Kendrick felt like he was the culture. Fans noticed. The volume of Wayne's rollout started to feel like he was trying to prove something. Kendrick, by doing almost nothing, had already made the point. Sometimes, in an era of oversaturation, the quietest strategy is the one that sticks the hardest. Then industry power plays behind the scenes. While fans debated lyrics and Super Bowl stages, something even bigger was happening behind closed doors. Kendrick was being offered premium brand deals, curating museum exhibitions, and being whispered about for major collaborations across fashion, film, and politics. Lil Wayne, he remained a legend, but one tied mostly to music, and even then increasingly to nostalgia. The industry began to reflect what the fans already sensed. Kendrick had currency, not just in streams, but in influence. When brands and platforms start picking you to represent the culture, that's power. And in 2024-2025, Kendrick became the name they trusted with that. Wayne was still visible, but it was the kind of visibility that felt earned in the past. Kendrick's visibility felt future-proof. And in the business of hip-hop, perception isn't just PR, it's positioning. Kendrick didn't need to take anything from Wayne. The culture was already offering it to him. Kendrick let fans finish the job. Kendrick's silence wasn't passive, it was a calculated trap. He knew Wayne's return would come loud, full of bravado and bars. He also knew the culture was hungry for reflection, evolution, and vision. So Kendrick stayed quiet and let fans write the narrative for him. The more Wayne promoted, the more fans dissected. The more they dissected, the more they found themselves comparing him to Kendrick. Kendrick's name trended off speculation alone. Reaction videos questioned whether Wayne had fallen off while praising Kendrick's restraint. Kendrick didn't even have to drop a bar to dominate the discussion. And by the time Carter VI was fully digested, the verdict was clear in the streets. Wayne's comeback had heart, but Kendrick's silence had strategy. The brilliance? Kendrick never attacked. He just let the public crown him. And when fans decide the winner, no amount of promo can rewrite that story. Lil Wayne's own words gave Kendrick the edge. One of the most poetic twists in this whole story came from Wayne himself. In an interview, he called Kendrick one of the greatest to ever do it. And while that wasn't meant as surrender, it landed that way. Coming during a time when Wayne was trying to reassert his position, the compliment felt like a passing of the torch, even if unintentional. Fans latched onto it. Screenshots of the quote went viral. YouTubers started using it as a symbolic moment, the king acknowledging the new ruler. Wayne's intention was likely respect, but in the context of a comeback attempt, It felt like self-sabotage. In a battle he didn't even know he was losing, Wayne may have handed Kendrick the crown outright. And that's the power of timing, because when perception is already shifting, even praise can sound like resignation. The throne is quietly being rebuilt. What Kendrick pulled off wasn't a diss, it was a disruption. He didn't fire shots, didn't hijack headlines. He simply existed at the exact right time with the exact right strategy and let the moment unfold. Wayne's Carter VI didn't flop, it just got outclassed. Kendrick didn't make noise, he became the standard. That's what makes this story so wild. No drama, no beef, no blood, just dominance through silence. And now, the throne that once belonged to Wayne is being quietly reassembled under Kendrick's name, piece by piece, moment by moment, not through fights, but through weight. And that weight comes from knowing when not to move. If Wayne's comeback was built on volume, Kendrick's legacy is being built on gravity. And when the dust settles, people won't remember who shouted loudest. They'll remember who moved the culture without saying a word. Lil Wayne will always be a legend, but even legends can be humbled, not by battles, but by precision. Kendrick didn't have to attack to dominate. He just had to be undeniable, and sometimes the strongest statement is no statement at all. If you felt that, please subscribe, because the game's not done shifting, and we'll be right here covering every move.